In 1799, Ichabod Crane, a New York City police constable criticized for his favoritism of scientific methods, is dispatched to the upstate Dutch hamlet of Sleepy Hollow, which has been plagued by a series of brutal decapitations. A wealthy father and son, Peter and Dirk Van Garrett, and a widow, Emily Winship. Received by the insular town elders, wealthy businessman Baltus Van Tassel, town doctor Thomas Lancaster, the Reverend Steenwick, notary James Hardenbrook, and magistrate Samuel Phillips. Ichabod learns that locals believe the killer is the undead apparition of a headless Hessian mercenary from the American Revolutionary War who rides a black steed in search of his missing head. Ichabod, however, is skeptical of the paranormal due to his family past. Boarding at the home of Baltus Van Tassel and his second wife, Lady Van Tassel, he is taken with Baltus' spiritual daughter, Katrina, from his first marriage. When a fourth victim, Jonathan Mossbath, a servant in the Van Garrett household, is killed, Ichabod takes the victim's son, young Mossbath, under his wing. Ichabod and Mossbath exhume the victims on a tip from Phillips, learning that the widow died pregnant. The horseman decapitates Phillips next. Ichabod, young Mossbath, and Katrina venture into the western woods to look for the horseman's grave. They find a crone witch living in a cave, who reveals that the horseman's grave is at the Tree of the Dead. Ichabod digs up the horseman's grave and discovers the skull has been taken, deducing that it has been stolen by someone who now controls him. The tree is his portal into the living world, and the horseman will continue to take people's heads until his skull is restored to him. That night, the horseman kills village midwife Beth Killian and her family, as well as Katrina's suitor Brum Van Brunt when he attempts to intervene. Ichabod is wounded by the horseman, but survives. Ichabod hypothesizes that the horseman is attacking targets linked by a conspiracy. Hardenbrook reveals that the first victim, Peter Van Garrett, had secretly married the widow, writing a new will that left his estate to her and her unborn child. Ichabod deduces that all the victims, except Brum, were either beneficiaries or witnesses to this new will, and that the horseman's master is the person who would have otherwise inherited the estate, Baltus, a Van Garrett relative. Upon discovering the accusation, Katrina angrily burns the evidence. Hardenbrook commits suicide, and Steenwick convenes a town meeting at the church to discredit Ichabod, but Baltus bursts in, announcing that the horseman has killed Lady Van Tassel. The horseman attacks the church, but is unable to enter. In the chaos, the remaining elders turn on each other. Steenwick kills Lancaster and is in turn killed by Baltus, who is harpooned and decapitated by the horseman. Initially concluding that Katrina controls the horseman, Ichabod discovers that the diagram she drew beneath his bed and in the church, which he believed summoned the horseman, is really one of protection. He finds that the wound on Lady Van Tassel's decapitated body was caused post-mortem. Van Tassel, alive and well, reveals herself as the master of the horseman. She faked her death and killed the Van Tassel's servant girl, Sarah, to plant her body as hers. She takes Katrina to the windmill, where she explains her true heritage. She and her twin sister were members of the impoverished Archer family who were evicted years ago by Peter Van Garrett, when he favored Baltus and his family instead. She swore revenge against Van Garrett and all who had wronged her family, pledging herself to Satan if he would raise the horsemen to avenge her by killing them, which would allow her to claim the Van Garrett and Van Tassel estates uncontested. Manipulating her way into the Van Tassel household, she used fear, blackmail, and lust to manipulate the other elders into her plot. Having eliminated all other heirs and witnesses, as well as her sister, the crone witch, for aiding Ichabod, she summons the horseman to finish Katrina, the last person remaining in the way of the will. Ichabod and Mossbath rush to the windmill as the horseman arrives. After an escape that destroys the windmill and a subsequent chase to the Tree of the Dead, Ichabod retrieves the horseman's skull from Van Tassel and returns it to him, breaking the curse, and setting the horseman free from Van Tassel's control. With his head restored, the horseman spares Katrina and instead abducts Van Tassel, giving her a bloody kiss and returning to hell via the Tree of the Dead with her in tow, fulfilling her end of the deal. With the case solved, Ichabod returns to New York City with Katrina and young Moss Bath, just in time for the new century. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more movie recap like this, and comment if you want to see your movie in the next video. Peace out.